Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast. I'm Steve, and today we have Tommy and Karl with us today. Um, Karl is someone that I had the pleasure of seeing speak back at the Aquaponics Fest, back at Aquaponics Source, and I think it was 2014. I think it was.
I think so.
Yeah, and he gave a really amazing 2 hour long talk. Sorry about that. Really amazing 2 hour long talk on black soldier flies, and it was really cool. So he's with us to talk to us about that. So it'll be a really cool episode, especially if we haven't had an aquaponic guest in a couple episodes, so this will be really neat. Um, so if you guys are also interested, we'll shout out to Ouroboros Farms real quick. OuroborosFarms.com. You can check them out. They have a whole wide variety of classes. I teach a variety of different classes over there with them. So check that out. The next aquaponic cannabis class is online and in person on September 23rd and 24th. So check it out if you're looking for that. All right, thanks a lot. Well, Karl, why don't you tell us what you do and what you've been up to, and a little bit about you.
Well, since about 2007, I've been working in the bioconversion industry, which specifically pertains to black soldier fly rearing and cultivation. I think the latest term they call it is ento technology, ento engineering, pertaining to entomology. It's a fast-growing industry now because there's so many beneficial insects as of late that have piqued people's interest in cultivation, everything from crickets to mealworms. And it's an exciting time to be in this industry because of all the momentum. Black soldier fly was one of those early, I guess you call it early adopters when it came to bioconversion. Obviously, we've been cultivating insects for decades, the silk moth, the honeybee, and quite a few others. This particular species, which is native of the Southeast, had been kind of rediscovered as a potent force for getting rid of waste products, primarily organic waste. And it wasn't soon afterwards that people were starting to look at it as a primary source of feed for chickens, fish, reptiles, and other types of animal categories that may have as part of their diet live feed. And so it originally, when we developed this technology, it was for primarily waste reduction and waste diversion. And it's really that has taken a back burner to where the end products, the coveted end products, are really what is sought after with the technology. We developed back in 2007 some units that have been updated and improved over the years, and they still exist today. In fact, it's one of the only products marketable on the planet for easily rearing black soldier flies. And the reason is we have the special ramp technology, which allows for the auto crawl off to be taken advantage of, and that auto separation makes it so much easier to manage the colony without having to manually separate the waste pile and active pile from the finished mature grubs. It's really nice. If you've ever cultivated earthworms or redworms, you know how much of a challenge it can be separating the waste from the catkins and worms.
Do you want to explain that a little bit more about so people that haven't maybe kept black soldier flies before, about how that works as far as the auto harvesting?
Oh, sure. There's an inherent instinctual tendency for the mature grubs of this species, once they get to the last instar and become pre-pupa, which is notably apparent by the color change from cream to brown or cream to black. And what we did is we took advantage of that instinct, and we created some ramps to allow them to evacuate the active waste pile and make it easy for the user to collect them in some type of receptacle. And it is really amazing to see that performance occur when you see them marching up the ramps and dropping into your bucket, all ready to be carried over to your fish pond or poultry pen. It's really an involved component of the technology. The angles are critical. The surface material is important, and they are limited in how far they will crawl. And so we looked into it, researched it, studied it, and came up with a small unit and a large unit, both of which have that component in it. A lot of people who make these do-it-yourself, Steve, they do have a ramp that has a preferred angle, and they then fall into the receptacle. The problem with the do-it-yourself systems is most of the ones I've seen are made out of wood, and that fabricated wood tends to rot very quickly, especially with the moisture and the acidity of the active pile. The problem is when you try to use pressure treated woods, or if you try to seal in the wood, you can probably you run into problems with contaminating the colony and the active pile. And so the raw woods are always preferred. They just don't last long. So we use polyethylene, and we've been very pleased with that material.
Awesome. So what other, how do people, so say if someone gets one of your biopods, which is the unit you guys have, how do people go about getting black soldier flies? What kind of things can they feed them?
Oh, great question. In regards to attracting black soldier fly for your do-it-yourself pod, or one of the pods that we manufacture, and by the way, they're manufactured here in the U.S. in North Carolina, to be specific, and that's really nice that they're made here in the States, employing people. The great thing about this species is that where it is located naturally, you don't have really a problem attracting them. They kind of just show up. They can detect even infinitesimal small concentrations of odors that come off of any type of putrescent food waste or ripe fruits. Those odors they detect quickly, and those pregnant females will find the food waste. So if your zone has them naturally, you're going to more than likely, unless you're in some microclimate, you're going to more than likely attract them. Where they are in the country is zone 7 and up is usually a sure bet. Some people tell me in zone 6 they have sporadically encountered black soldier fly. I even get people calling me from Michigan and northern Pennsylvania, where I know it's not zone 7, and telling me that their pods are being naturally seeded with black soldier fly, which is great. For those people who live outside the natural zones for black soldier fly, like let's say you live in the desert southwest where there's nothing alive in the insect world, or you live at a high altitude, or you live in the northern tier states and you're doing it in a climate controlled setting like a greenhouse, you'd have to get some grubs online. There is Texas A&M has something called popworms, and popworms is a new released method of cultivation. I believe the transportation device to get people their babies is called bullets, and they put thousands and thousands of these neonates or keiki or whatever you want to call the babies in these bullets, and they ship them to you, and you can get larva growth very quickly from them. But popworms is their name, and I'm trying to think if they have a website. I believe they do, but you could just Google popworms. Those are just black soldier fly babies. I just wanted to make sure that people who live outside the zones of where they occur naturally can definitely order them online. And honestly, for people who live in the areas where they occur, Steve, you may want to do this in the winter time, and obviously there's not a lot of insects around, so you can order those online and start your colony indoors. You do need climate-controlled conditions to simulate their native environment. They like it humid. They like it warm. If you have an aquaponic system already that's being conditioned in a space, the black soldier fly will definitely work in that capacity. In regards to what to feed them, Steve, I've been told that this particular insect larva, or maggot or grub or whatever you want to call it, even though it's technically a maggot, it has one of the widest digestive enzyme profiles of any species of insect, which means it can eat quite a bit. Now, when I say quite a bit, if you were to just provide it with mixed food waste, you're basically going to get almost 100% bioconversion. There's a 5% residual of undigested residue that builds up. That's just stuff that they don't eat, mostly with lignin and hemicellulose and some other indigestible materials. But for the most part, they eat almost all the food scraps. When people ask me what particular food scraps, things with calories they like. So you're not going to get huge growth of grub colonies or bioconversion feeding them celery and cilantro and, uber hippie food. It's just not going to happen. You need to give them bad American diets that have a lot of calories. Things that make Americans grow big make grubs grow big.
So I got a question on that note. So what about giving them kefir or the cheese off your kefir?
I would say try it. My guess is they will probably eat it. I've noticed they will digest just about anything. The things I've noticed don't get eaten are things that are probably not surprised, like mammal bones, the heavy mammalian bones, citrus rinds. I've noticed they won't eat anything paper related because it's lignin. They won't eat wood, cardboard, none of that. Eggshells do not get digested. Let's see, what else can I think of that doesn't get eaten in a pod? That's kind of it. Everything else just tends to disappear. Chicken bones and other soft type of bones, they don't get broken down quickly by the grub's ravenous diet, but I noticed they do disappear over time, Steve. So I'm concluding that the acidity of the pod is probably breaking it down and the microbes are assisting with that, which is why they disappear. But the thick mammal bones, they don't disappear. If you put roadkill in there, you're gonna see the bones persist. But mixed food waste is great. I also make it clear to people when I go over setup and operations with them that I now provide a substrate when I set up any type of pod, whether it's a do-it-yourself pod or one of our pods. And that substrate is made up of one or two things, either coffee grounds or brewer's mash. The brewery waste and coffee grounds act as a substrate. And when you feed a pod daily and they're eating almost all the food you put in there, they need a refuge to go hide in. And if you don't provide that, they're like little minnows out of water and there's no place for them to go hide and scurry because they don't like light. Providing the coffee grounds and brewer waste allows that tendency to go hide to be fulfilled. One thing about those two substrates is they're also readily eaten by the grubs. So you're not only providing them a safe refuge and a substrate, you're providing them some nourishment. In fact, if you just keep coffee grounds that are moist next to your pod, they'll get infested with black soldier flies, which is awesome. But there's many reasons why, I won't go into it, that a substrate I've found is useful. But let's just say it helps provide the refuge and moisture balance. Also, those materials aren't readily compressible, Steve. So it's difficult to get anaerobic pockets in the coffee grounds. That natural non-compressibility keeps it kind of porous and open matrix. The grubs themselves do a lot of churning and mixing and bring in oxygen because of their tunneling, but the coffee grounds do assist with maintaining aerobic conditions. I always use them now to set up a pod. In fact, I use an entire 5-gallon bucket on the big pods.
I have a question. I'm new to this side of things. I've been following, Steve, and I just took his class. In case anybody's out there wondering if it's worth going and taking that class, get your butt over there. It's totally worth it. It was just an awesome weekend learning all those things. And something that came up when they were going over to the worm bin, where they're doing they put some fish products in there and some other things like that. They said they don't use mammalian waste things in there. Does this fact that you're giving maybe mammalian food and stuff, it doesn't affect Steve's fish ponic stuff? Because you're just eating the grubs, you're not then putting all the soil kind of things back in there?
Let me ask a question. This class, was it redworms or earthworms, perhaps?
Yep, there are redworms and earthworms.
Okay, they don't have the digestive enzymes necessary to readily break down meat waste and dairy and fats. This species do. They're completely different arthropods.
Yep.
Segmented annelids are limited on what they can eat. This particular species is part of Diptera, which is the order of Insecta. And Diptera is the flies. So if you've noticed, houseflies can just eat about everything. This species actually is better at consuming in bioconversion than a housefly, believe it or not.
Nice.
But they're different species. They can eat a lot more. I will tell you this, Tommy. Earthworms and redworms take a lot longer to bioconvert waste. The speed of black soldier fly is so alarmingly fast that you honestly think when you've added the food waste that somebody went in and stole the food waste overnight, because you just can't believe that it disappeared that quickly. I had a friend of mine who had a problematic groundhog that no longer was a problem in their garden. The carcass got placed in the pod, and they contacted me, Karl, could a groundhog crawl out of one of the big pods? And I'm like, why do you ask me that? He's like, well, I put in a groundhog and it disappeared. So I went over there in a few days, poked around and found the skull. It had eaten it down to nothing in a matter of 1 to 2 days. And he couldn't believe that it was that quick. And I almost am so skeptical that I've actually gone out and done time-lapse photography, because I can't believe they eat this fast, but they do. Now I'm just surprised when they don't eat something. And so when I don't see, Tommy, them eating quickly, I'm thinking maybe something's wrong, temperature issue, maybe a chemical that's in the food waste, or perhaps some other parameter that's out of bounds. So you'll find that this species is a lot faster, gets the attention of kids a lot easier, because they almost can see the mini piranhas at work. Even though they don't bite and they don't eat living flesh and they don't have teeth to hurt you, their speed is very similar.
Cool.
I think his question was that do they break down stuff like E. coli or salmonella? Is that food hazard issue?
Tommy,
and then you can introduce it to the fish river. That's what I was heard of, the concern of some of the mammalian stuff, is you didn't want to get it in the fish river that Steve works with.
To answer that, and I missed that portion of the question, I apologize. I was told, Steve, and Tommy, that they do consume the pathogens in there, and the pathogens, as a percentage, decline and decrease. However, it's not eliminated. Just like there's always going to be microbes on the surface of the black soldier flies that don't get consumed, there's absolutely no way to bring it down to zero. If you are concerned about a pathogen on, let's say, spoiled food that could potentially impact your fish or chickens, I tell people to just cook the grubs, just like you would cook chicken, and just cook them. And you can put them in the oven, you can put them in the microwave, you can cook them, you can boil them, you can do just about anything you want. I would say if there are germs there, Tommy, my gut feeling is that they're on the outside, because you just can't eliminate it. There's just no way. And I think it's better to be on the safe side. Now, that being said, I don't know many people that take their mature grubs from their bucket and immediately cook them. Most people just feed it directly to their chickens and fish without too much incident. But if you want to be cautious and err on the side of safety, especially if you're going to be feeding tilapia to restaurants, you might want to make sure that there is no chance of contamination. Just like, it's okay to drink raw milk, there are going to be examples of raw milk that are dangerous and infected.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. We had a question from chat. It says, are they more for getting rid of waste, or do they make fertilizer also, or is it just for total consumption? Like, do they consume everything, or do they have like a byproduct similar to worm casings?
For mixed food waste, the undigested residue as a percentage of volume is about 5%. If you were to start feeding it things that are lower in nutrient content, like crap, let's say you're putting cow poop, there's a buildup of 20 to 25% of undigested residue. I mean, the reason crap is because there's not much left in it. It's crap. So there's not a lot of nutrient and energy in it. So, of course, there's going to be more undigestible residue. So you'll get more material at the bottom, but it's not compost per se. Compost takes weeks to months to make and is primarily the byproduct of microbes. Black soldier fly eat faster than the microbes do. And so the whole goal of managing a pod or a do-it-yourself colony is to make sure you're maintaining conditions that favor grub digestion over microbe digestion. So in that respect, you're looking at a finished product of grubs, not necessarily undigested residue. Again, I don't like to say compost because it's not compost. I always tell people, this is great to get rid of waste, but really it's great to produce a nutritious biomass in the form of grubs. If you want to use the undigested residue that's accumulating, that also has castings mixed in and a little bit of compost because some microbes are working in there, I would say take all of that material and move it to a vermiculture bed, primarily redworms. The stuff that doesn't get eaten by grubs just happens to be loved by redworms because there's a lot of lignin in there. So you're going to get a pre-digested material that is loved by redworms, and in fact will allow your redworms to produce castings a little bit faster. And it also serves as a way to get rid of that waste buildup. I do know that people will take that undigested residue, mix it with shredded cardboard and a little bit of grit for some added bonus to help the worms because they like cardboard and they need grit for the digestion, so a little sand. I've seen people in Hawaii doing that. I do it when I'm really, really bored. But other people just take the undigested material and bury it. It needs to be finished off and composted or converted. And, if you have a worm bin, go that route because it's going to be faster than the normal food waste in your worm bin.
Awesome. No, I've seen sometimes people's bins, they have sometimes little mites, like red mites or white mites. Is that something that you occasionally come across? Or?
I have seen many different types of mites in pods. I have not seen a circumstance where the mites have been detrimental to a functioning pod. I assume in a pod that's not working properly, you may have an infestation that's actually harming the grubs, but I haven't seen that. There are mites associated with many, many insects in a symbiotic relationship that they just kind of live together. Most of the mites that I see infesting pods are usually in there to just eat some of the food waste or break down waste, but they're usually not targeting grubs. I would love to find out if there are. I haven't seen that, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. So.
Very, very cool. So what are some of the problems you see people that run into, or having sold and dealt with a bunch of these? What's some of the stuff that you've seen people maybe more common, or maybe some of the weird or wackier things you've seen, if you don't know?
I can go over the major problems I've seen over the years. First of all, it's a very easy species to maintain. It's actually easier than most insects because of their wide digestive enzyme profile, but also they're pretty hardy. They're much less persnickety than redworms and earthworms, and they're definitely easier than bees. But there are limitations onto their abilities. The zones of death, I call it, are if your colony starts to go over 107 to 110, they're going to die. The insects just can't do real much after 110, and they just croak. I don't really see much grub activity below 65, even though they'll live and they'll be hardy down into the 50s. You won't see much activity. They're almost sluggish. They're cold-blooded, so of course they're going to be. Adults are much less hardy than the grubs, and just like most seasonal insects that you see flying around, the flies, the bees, the butterflies, you're not going to see them when it gets cold. And so you tend to get die-off of the adults in the later parts of autumn. So I do see problems with pods associated with temperature. In the Southwest, I get reports where their pods go over 110, they just die off. If it's too cold, they're going to be more of an arrested development, but it won't kill them. My pods go down into the 50s in the late fall, sometimes in the 40s at night, and they're still in there and they're active. When it warms back up, I feed them and they're just as robust. It doesn't kill them. I do see moisture issues being a problem with some people. They tend to, in the Southwest especially, in other drier climates, not put enough moisture in, and you don't get good crawl off because of it, and there's less bioconversion. So you have to maintain kind of an oatmeal type consistency where it's more or less constantly moist. And by the way, those substrates help with moisture balance. I would say that it's easier to let your pod dry out than it is to overly wet them. When they're overly wet, the liquid tends to just drain out and drip through the drainage, so you almost can't give it too much moisture. Another problem is anaerobicity or stagnant pockets. The substrates help with this, but let's say somebody doesn't use a substrate, or they're not spreading the waste that they add every day evenly. You'll get a pocket like a clump of gu gu gai pan from the Chinese restaurant that you got their waste from. And that pocket of waste just accumulates in the corner. It's not being mixed. It just starts to anaerobically decay from the inside out. The grubs aren't in there, and the microbes that produce odor are taking over and dominating, causing stink. So I do notice when people start neglecting their pod and not listening to their nose, you'll get odor. I always tell people oxygen is the great, freer of bad smell, and you just got to go in with one of those little hippie claws and break up the clumps of anaerobic conditions and mix in the substrate, and you'll tend to bring back aerobic conditions and mitigate the smells. Also, when your drainage is clogged and the liquids start to back up, there's nothing like warm food waste on a hot environment sitting in water to produce a smell. So you always want to make sure drainage is occurring. I mean, food waste is like 65% water. So you're going to get a lot of liquid waste through digestion. So you got to have it be able to drain as quickly and as easily as possible. And a lot of people in their homemade do-it-yourself kits, they don't think about the drainage. You just get stink because of liquid buildup. So those are the three problems I normally see: smell, temperature issues, and moisture issues.
Do you have uses for that juice that comes out of the bottom of the bug container, the pod?
I have some interesting personalities who swear by that stuff as the elixir of their success and their prize peppers or their prize something that they're growing. I have found it personally not useful, so I let it drain into the ground below. I just make sure to locate my pod on a porous surface so it falls into the mulch below and into the ground, and it provides nutrients to whatever's growing near it. In my case, grapes. I will say this: I did find one particular use that I still use the liquid effluent for, and I don't call it tea because it's an effluent. I do save a mason jar full every year, Tommy, wide mouth, not regular mouth, because you can freeze wide mouth. You go putting water in a regular mouth mason jar and you put it in the freezer, it's going to crack. So make sure it's wide mouth. But anyway, I save maybe a pint of that every year, and I use that to, I guess you call it, inoculate my pod in the spring. That odor seems to attract the pregnant females faster than just the food waste alone. And I mix it into the substrate food waste mixture in the spring, and then I'll save another quart or 2 pints or whatever that year, and then freeze that. So that I have found is being useful. Other people think they can use it on their garden. I personally think the microbial activity is so high, Tommy, that there is the potential to have bad pathogens mixed in that came in on your food waste. You can't have food waste that doesn't have bad pathogens. It's not easy because most food waste is not sterile.
So you don't ferment it or anything like that?
I would say it's probably stupid to take that liquid and spray it on your salad greens. If you wanted to put it dilute maybe on certain acid-loving plants, like your rhododendrons and azaleas, I don't think you're going to have a problem with that. It's probably going to be beneficial, but more or less the acidic loving plants.
Cool. I'm loving
Very
learning
cool.
about all this stuff. It's great.
Remember, Tommy, managing waste and collecting the liquid effluent is one more thing that you have to do. And if you don't have to do it and you just let it drain into the ground below, it just frees up your time. So I try to tell people don't overly engineer these or it'll drive you crazy.
Well, I'm already crazy, and I'm also a cheap bastard. So I'm always looking for, okay, we have this thing over here, and is the juice that's coming out of that, is there something in there that we want, and it's there, that's why that's how I look at stuff. I don't know.
Well, if you're cheap, you should be using your urine as fertilizer, as I do. I would suggest this. In the spring, when you have your garden planted, take a couple pepper plants and try some dilute effluent on some and not others, and compare them after 2 months.
Just remember, alcohol-based urine was very good because it also feeds your acetobacters.
There you go.
You can write off your beer as fertilizer.
There you go.
It only takes a creative accountant these days.
Till you get caught.
It's a tax deduction. What else, Steve? What else, Tommy?
Oh, so we had a question from chat. It says, "Do ants? What happens if you get ants in your bin?"
Ants are the biggest problem I've ever seen for pods. I have been lucky in that I have not personally had a lot of ant problems. I think I had it once. For some reason, I just don't get it. But if you do, there are a couple things that you can try that will help. I keep all of my pods elevated, normally on cinder blocks. You can put diatomaceous earth around the cinder blocks, usually with boric acid mixed in. You can put tack gel type materials, which is like almost like a Vaseline that surrounds the elevation points. A water moat is useful for ants, but then incentivizes mosquitoes. So I try to dissuade people from doing the water moats, especially in the South, because in a few days you get mosquitoes. Controlling ants from their source is also a method or an approach, but I don't know if there's a foolproof way of controlling ants, only because we all still have them, no matter what we do.
I like grit.
There's what is it? There's like 18 times the weight of ants on the earth as there are weight of humans. If you just look at biomass, so
I don't know. I don't know if they're taking into account the Walmart humans.
Oh yeah.
So that might be a race there. I would say
very part of YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say you can only mitigate against ants. You're not going to really prevent it. But the Vaseline type materials to coat the surfaces, you got to just be able to prevent their entry, and that is a good way of doing it. I would not recommend using any pesticides near the pods because I've been told by entomologists that the adult flies are actually quite sensitive to harmful chemicals.
How about things like a talc? I think I was watching this guy who raises ants, like it's his thing, and around the top of all of his colonies, he has a dusting of a talc powder, and the ants apparently just hate it. And even very aggressive ant species that he keeps, because he keeps them as pets, he can keep very, what you consider dangerous ants, if they are, in his colonies with that dusting of powder.
I'll have to try that. I have not tried talcum powders. Just off the shelf, or does he have a special brand or mixture?
I was just looking into it. I didn't study it or anything. Sorry, I don't have the answer. I just was thinking of barriers, and that's what his go-to thing is.
Was it boric? Was it borax and not talcum? Borax is a real good one.
Yeah, well, it's,
Works real great. The other one is Vaseline. Like he was talking about Vaseline. I've kept huge roach colonies in a open top aquariums. No problem. And in fact, he's even seen one of them. I gave Karl his roaches for his colony to get him started. I used to breed a ton of them. So
you mentioned using diatomaceous earth and boric acid. Why are you adding, around the bottom? Of course, I was funny because I was thinking about your worms. You can't use DE and that, but when you were doing around the bottom to keep the ants from going, why do you add the boric acid for people out there?
The boric acid somehow disrupts the life cycle of the ants. I don't know what the mechanism is, but I was told it enhances the ability of DE to do what it needs to do, but I don't know the mechanism chemically.
Well, DE scratches the exoskeleton and then they dehydrate and die.
Yes, that's what it does. It's a mechanical pesticide.
Oh, really?
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
I thought it was when they clean themselves that insects have a super low tolerance to boron.
That probably is what it is.
Well,
I haven't researched why boric acid helps enhance the effectiveness of the diatomaceous earth. Apparently, it works in tandem, but it doesn't necessarily have the same mechanism. Because you're right. The ants do die of desiccation for
It sounds like you're hitting them from two different directions is what it really sounds like. It's not like it enhances the diatomaceous earth, but if you put DE down and then use boric acid too, you got two ways to kill them. That's what it sounds like.
That's what I meant when I said enhances the efficacy of the material, not so much the mechanism that how diatomaceous earth works.
Well, thanks. I'm sure everybody enjoyed that. Figuring that out.
I used it a ton.
By
on
the way, I'm
bench.
Roger. I'm Roger, and I was late. Sorry about that. I had a conference. You can't. So I've got a network I'm building. Sometimes the tech guys aren't available unless they're available. You better be in conference with them when they're available, or it might be a week. So, but no, I'm Roger anyway. I didn't get your name.
His name is Karl.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Karl. Yeah.
It says Tar River, so I didn't want to call you Tar. So I wasn't
You
sure.
can call me just about anything. Tar's fine.
So,
TR baby. All right.
Tar video, great.
Roger's always trying to get us in trouble every episode.
I would say this: based on the frugality of probably a lot of your listeners, I would say try out your own do-it-yourself pod. Maybe the first year if you've never tried black soldier fly, and just kind of get comfortable and knowledgeable with the life cycle and what they eat and what they prefer, temperature-wise, light-wise, and kind of get used to it. And if it's something you think you want to pursue, then invest in one of our technologies. We could come up with a discount schedule for listeners of your podcast and just say, okay, I heard about this through Steve's podcast. And then we'll say, oh, okay. And we'll look up and just put a discount in, just like a friend and family thing. And that way, there's kind of a little benefit for them having listened to your podcast. And that's no problem at all. But I like people to, I don't like to force our technology on people. I want them to become comfortable with it. And then once they do, they kind of then can move up in efficiency. And I know our technology will help with that. So.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. That's really cool of you.
And after making mistakes for a year, I bet you they really appreciate your system when they finally get it.
They do. A lot of the do-it-yourselfers run into real issues with odor.
And so aside from the black soldier flies, what other insects have you been raising or keeping? And I know you have a website and stuff. And what are some of the other things?
Well, they're not on our website, but I personally raise mealworms. They're just about the easiest thing on the planet to raise. And of course, the hissers, the hissing cockroaches, the Madagascar roaches, they're both a lot of fun. I will want to pursue getting some walking sticks in the future. Probably the ones from Malaysia that are what is it, parthenocarpic? Is that the right word?
So the live bearers ones?
Yeah, they're all females and they don't need a male to mate. I think it's called parthenogenesis.
I think you're right.
And that would be nice, especially as a way to, instead of buying gifts for people, I like to give gifts like either plants or insects as colonies as gifts. It seems more real. So, and they're cute.
That's awesome.
I love that.
We had a question. A guy in chat asked, would it be bad to put diatomaceous earth in your worm bin?
I would not do that because it'll probably get in there. The chitin, a soft exoskeleton, it'll get in between their segments and probably cause desiccation. Yep,
definitely. In fact, it tells you, that the only way you can use. No, there is a thing about when I was researching it originally, one thing I did find, they said if you wanted to use DE in conjunction with worms in some kind of situation, you would have to put it on the top and let the worms work it into the soil themselves. You wouldn't be able to mix it in like you would if you don't want any bugs at all, if you want everything just done. But I still would see, I agree, because I'm a big proponent of diatomaceous earth. It's one of the things that'll get rid of spider mites, and it works because I've never had spider mites since I used it, and never again. And probably because there's still remnants in the room. But yeah, I would never put it in with worms because the whole point is, it basically, for the layman's terms, it scratches their body. They then dehydrate and die, and then the eggs hatch and they come out and they crawl through it and they dehydrate. They get scratched, they dehydrate and die. So it's probably not a good idea, as Karl says, or anybody else would tell you. It's probably not a good idea to use DE in the worm bins or anything else you want to keep alive that's crawling around, like artificial insects or anything. It'll kill them.
I mean, basically, it's just microscopic glass particles, and
kind of, yeah. It's a fossil shell polymer. It's fossilized insects that they found in a quarry and it's dug up in I don't know, Montana or somewhere like that, and it's full of nutrients and minerals. It's like you can eat it. It's in food in our grocery stores. You can feed it to your dogs. It will rid dogs, animals, and humans of all your parasites that are in your intestines and all. We all have parasites, whether you like it or not. If you eat some DE, put it in some yogurt, and you put a tablespoon in yogurt and eat it, clean you out. You feel like you got all kinds of energy then. You know. Sorry, but I love that stuff.
Yeah, no, he's spot on. I will say this: it's not an insect skeleton; it's actually an algae.
An algae? Well, okay. Well, I read it as a fossilized insect.
Kind of like a phytoplankton.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So it's like little sea creatures and plankton and all the algae.
Okay, well, yeah, that's why all the minerals come from, right? Plankton and all that good stuff from the ocean. All right, so I'll have to go read up a little bit more. I just know it works, and I've used it, and I quit researching it. So thanks for cluing me in that I'm a little wanting on my explanation of what it is.
Isn't it true that diatomaceous earth also messes with thoracic breathers?
I can't tell you that myself. I know that you don't want to. Well, I know one thing, people. Well, while we're on the topic, you want to make sure when we're mentioning diatomaceous earth, let's get straight right here. Do not use pool grade, commercial, pool grade industrial diatomaceous earth. It's toxic, and it will mess with your respiratory system and stuff like that. Make sure you get food grade Codex diatomaceous earth. Do not buy
very true.
Grade filtering diatomaceous earth. That's a big warning for you guys out there. And I don't know if that, but you reminded me, Tommy, of that. Thank you for your question. I'm not sure if that helped you or not, but you can ingest this stuff. So I wouldn't want to snort it or anything, but you can eat it. So if you can eat it, and I've eaten it, and I've given it to my dogs, and we all loved it. And it does work to get rid of bugs, the pests that crawl around.
Oh. Okay, technically it's a protist. I just looked it up. The diatoms are protists. So anyway, specifically chrysophytes.
Chrysophytes?
Chrysophytes are golden algae.
Golden algae. All right.
Very cool. So you're saying you raise mealworms. You want to talk about that a little bit and what you use them for feed for?
Well, my friend Gina said, Carl, I want some of your cockroaches. I said, well, what are you going to do for me? And she said, well, I have mealworms.
Oh.
And so being the biologist I am, of course, I'll take that over other trading opportunities. And so I thought to myself, you know what? I've had these in stir fry. I've noticed they're really readily loved by everything from bearded dragons to, certain fish species in aquaria. And so I thought, you know what, let me go ahead and see if I can take a crack at this. It turned out to be really easy. I hydrate them exclusively with carrots, and I feed them either oat or wheat bran, or steel cut oats. I always get them on sale for $1 for a big thing of it, and so it's real cheap. And I use those little trays of plastic drawers. I just cut out the bottoms and put in kind of like a screen that's similar to your window screens in your windows. And I just glue that to the bottom, and the eggs fall out into trays below, and I make sure there's food down there. They're really easy to grow. I keep them in, between 70 and 80 degrees. And
that's pretty cool.
You know what? They're really easy. I did find out that they're not incapable of flying and don't necessarily have just a fused, I guess you call it wing area. They actually can fly. They just choose not to in most circumstances. But apparently they can fly. I've never seen one actually fly, though. Steve, I don't know if you have.
No, I've never seen them fly either. I raised them in a pet trade, so
They're
that's
fun
funny.
to grow, aren't they? Do you have any tips about growing them that you've learned that could benefit others?
The only thing we did, we used sweet potatoes instead of carrots. They seemed to like the sweet potatoes, and the little bit of sugar seemed to speed them up a little bit. But that was about it.
Oh, good to know. Okay. And you do them raw too, right? The raw sweet potato?
Yeah, we would just go buy the bag of sweet potatoes or whatever at the store. Last us the whole month or whatever.
Do you feed them all? Do you feed them all fresh from the store, or do you let it decay some?
Oh no, you cut them up. Usually you chop them into quarters or something. Makes it easier for them to eat, and then you
Right.
toss it. Maybe toss 2 or 3 in there a day if you don't have other stuff to feed them. Usually you got other stuff. Cleaning a bunch of the algae, or we take the planted aquarium plants and trim those sometimes and give them to give them some fresh greens or whatever, just to give them something diverse.
Have you heard through the latest studies with mealworms that they will actually bioconvert and consume styrofoam?
I saw that. I thought that was really crazy.
I didn't even know there was a species on the planet that can actually eat styrofoam.
Wow,
And they can actually digest it. I couldn't believe it.
Wow. I need some mealworms.
I mean, think about how much of that builds up in the landfill and
Yeah.
just with humanity.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I
Yeah,
didn't think
I mean, I
about
haven't tested it to see what rate of consumption it is, but
Throw some packing peanuts in there and see what happens.
it's interesting. It's interesting how the hell they found that out.
Right?
But what would be the
So
back
strange.
end side of that? Wouldn't they be possibly contaminated at that point to be used as such for food or whatever?
That was my main question, Roger, that I asked in my head, and the article answers it later on about there's no biological functional difference in the grub after consuming it.
Huh.
Just like when you have coffee or tea or some of the crap that you buy at the supermarket, like those synthetic soft drinks, you're still Roger. And
But jacked up.
yeah. So I mean, I guess it gets broken down into the molecular components of probably a carbohydrate or some type of simple sugar is my guess, because aren't they just all polymers? A lot of plastics. So
Yeah, basically.
Mostly, yeah.
Well, they're a byproduct of petroleum. And,
right. I mean, it's interesting that they have an enzyme that can break that molecular bond in the plastic. That's fascinating.
Yeah, not damage them. That's what I still wouldn't necessarily believe it doesn't damage them at all. But
Roger, what I think my curiosity was, are there microbes doing this in tandem, sort of like, what do you call those things that eat wood? Termites don't actually do the eating of the wood. The microbes in their gut does. So I'm wondering if there's a microbial synergy going on here.
Yeah.
And then finding that microbe, taking that microbe out and treating the styrofoam waste be more efficient? Who knows?
Yeah, I know that's like we said, we're all kind of blown back that you even found that they can do that, or this just recently come out.
I thought it was one of those clickbait fake news articles. I actually did.
Yeah, exactly. So we're gonna have to read about this for a while.
And no, it was really legit, and I guess Steve came across one too.
Oh, you did, yeah.
Yep.
So that's my 2 cents about interesting mealworm stories.
What about your roaches? What are you doing for your roaches? And then I can talk a little bit on.
I sell them on nextdoor.com to my neighborhood for like presents at the holidays. Kids want the colonies for gifts, and I tend to just give the colonies away as well.
Must start coming to your house for Halloween, huh?
Not Halloween. It tends to be the Christmas time, but we're very remote where I live, Roger, and nobody in their right mind is going to go down our driveway on Halloween.
Yeah, they don't come to my house either, but that was actually Tommy. But yeah, they don't come down my road either. I'm the scary guy in the neighborhood. So.
Well, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with scary. In a collapse scenario, Roger, probably people are going to avoid you.
Yeah, you got that whole thing going on.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool because when I have the food and I'm growing, when the lights go out and I'm growing my food, I hope they stay away.
Yeah, you just got to be below the radar.
Yeah.
I always liked at the pet store, I'd put 4 or 5 of them on my wrist with a long sleeve shirt on and grab something and plop my hand on the counter and just let them crawl out from underneath my long sleeve. And oh man, you were so fun, especially around Halloween, where you just scratch your head. Maybe I have one, I put it in my hair, especially with the dreads. And there's this big giant hissing cockroach comes crawling out of your hair. People freak out. It is too funny.
That is hysterical. I remember in that movie with what was the movie with Men in Black, where the guy had roaches coming out of his sleeve.
Yep.
Those were hissers.
Yep. Now, did I just give you hissers, or did I also give you some dubias as well? I think you just
gave me hissers. Hey, have you eaten the hissers yet? I heard they're delectable. I haven't.
I've never actually eaten roaches. I've eaten giant beetle larvae when I was in South America. They're like big grubs, and they were pretty good. They eat like some kind of palm or fruit wood or something like that, and they were super tasty. I'd totally eat those again, but I've never actually eaten the hissers. I know what's cool.
Delectable.
The hissers are crazy. Like if you feed them a ton every once in a while, so there's always like a king of the tank. There's a male that ends up larger than the others. They have like almost like saltwater fish, like damselfish or whatever, where you have the male and female, and the male is always the biggest, or the male is the second biggest fish, and then the main breeding sexually mature female is the largest fish, and then all the ones that are smaller than those two is like sexually subservient, and they don't reproduce. And then if one of them dies, one of them will, sometimes the male will switch to female and instantly get a growth spurt, and the next largest one will rise and replace the male, and it's pretty trippy. But roaches will do something similar where they'll have it's called like the king of the colony, and he'll be large, but every once in a blue moon they'll fight and have this huge swarm. And I literally had it on the other end of the house, and it woke me up at night because of all the churning they're doing after a big battle between two of them, where it just pisses off all the other ones, and all of them start hissing. And you'd be surprised the decibel level when they actually do that whole sorting out their pecking order. It's loud as fuck. And you'd be really, really surprised at just how ridiculously loud it is.
Probably make some money selling that as a ringtone.
I've heard it 5 or 6 times now, and it always amazes me. But you can raise thousands of them together. Like I had a 30-gallon tank with just a band of Vaseline around the top, and we had at least 2,000 roaches in there, and that was kept right in the kitchen. What we do is just scrape the plate side off into it, and when we needed to feed the monitors or feed the chickens, I just scrape a bunch out and dump it in their tank, or I'd scrape a bunch out and throw it in a Ziploc. Usually put a piece of. The easiest way to harvest them is to get a piece of pipe. Cut piece of pipe, usually 1-inch pipe or 1/2-inch pipe. 1-inch pipe's usually the best. You can get a stick of 1-inch pipe with a pipe cutter for like $4 at the store and cut it up. And just make yourself little tubes. They'll crawl in there, and they're happy to live in there. You just pop them out, shake them off into your Ziploc, close the Ziploc up, throw it in the freezer for half an hour, stuns all the roaches or kills them in most cases, and then dump them into your fish tank. This way you don't have to worry about them swimming across the top of the water and running off into your grow room.
Steve, I need to excuse myself for 1 second. I will be right back to you guys. Let me give you a topic. How about entomophagy? Talk amongst yourself. Be right back.
I love it, man. He's cool as shit.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite speakers. I've seen him talk on 2 separate occasions, and he's so knowledgeable and knows so many different intricacies on all this stuff. It's really cool to hear him speak, hear him talk on.
Would you reintroduce him now, since I was late and maybe late coming to the show? Reintroduce our guest.
His name is Karl Warkomski. He's developed a really cool black soldier fly product called the Biopod. And you can get it on, Tar River? I think his Tar River trading post. There's a link in the description for those of you who are interested. He also has a bunch of other survival and prep stuff and other things. And yeah, he's a really cool guy. I got a chance to get to know him at the convention that we both spoke at. So,
Andy also announced tonight that anybody that listens to the podcast will get a discount.
Yeah, we'll have a little discount code we'll put in the description there, and yeah, it'll be cool so that you guys will have a discount if you decide to buy one.
We'll get that website and all for you all later on in the show. You know,
Yep.
Before we let him get away. He's back.
All right.
Maybe.
The one thing I wanted to mention is a lot of people who buy our pods are doing it to offset the growing expense of feed. And not only for fish, but for their poultry, whether it's turkeys, chickens, quail, whatever. They're about 40% protein, about 35% fat, and they tend to be really good fats, as are most fats from insects. And it's the fats and the proteins that are the expensive portion of feed when you buy it. So if you can offset the expensive part of feed and then let your chickens or poultry pasture, you really can save a lot of money, you know, mentioning frugality earlier, by pursuing this methodology of feed production. I tell people to try to follow the golden rule of poultry feed. And this was told to me by an old timer in the South a couple years ago, and I've never forgot it. And he said, just follow the golden rule of 3. And I said, well, what's that? He said, break up your feed or chicken food into three components. 1/3 greens or grasses, basically anything in the pasture. 1/3 seeds or grains, basically, you know, leftover corn and sunflowers and whatever else you can produce on the homestead, amaranth, milo, millet, and then 1/3 critters. And those critters basically are bugs and insects, and black soldier fly definitely satisfy that 1/3 critters. And you know what? Over time, you can be almost 100% self-reliant on feed, especially if you're thinking about wanting to be, you know, off-grid and not have to go to Tractor Supply once a week. So I wanted to throw that out there. This definitely is achievable on being 100% off, I guess you call it the feed grid, which is, you know, one of those traps. What did they do 100 years ago? They didn't go to the store to buy chicken feed. They just let their chickens out.
They were self-substantial.
Right. So I wanted to just mention that there's a sustainable component of all this is just getting off the feed grid and trying to be more self-reliant. And I think it follows the tenets of permaculture, which I know Steve believes in as well. And I wanted to just emphasize that, and I had forgotten to mention it earlier.
So actually,
Marty would have been nuts tonight, man. Where's Marty? I mean, but go on. I didn't want to go on.
Marty's always the one doing insects. He had something came up tonight. He wasn't able to join us. So I had a question on that note. How would someone do a large scale setup for this? Say someone has a big farm and they want to do a bunch of chickens, or they have maybe, you know, 2 or 3 aquaponic greenhouses and want to do a bigger scale raise. I've seen a couple of interesting YouTube videos and like greenhouse type setups. What would you recommend or suggest for that kind of scenario?
I wouldn't recommend the small pods unless you have a small backyard flock or just a very small aquaponic system. The small pods are more or less designed for residential use. If you have a scaled environment where you need larger quantities of feed, I tell people go with the bigger pods. They take up a 4x4 space, which is 16 square feet. So you got to allocate space for it. And you have to have the ability to dump in waste. And you can normally find space in most greenhouse settings that are designed right now for aquaculture or maybe hydroponics or aquaponics. The problem is you have to remember that 110 threshold temperature. Sometimes greenhouses get hotter than that. You can actually kill the pod. You can let the life cycle of the adult and that portion, which is normally coming in from nature, be done inside the hoop house or greenhouse, and you don't have to have even inputs from nature. So there is an advantage by having a climate controlled setting with aquaponics, be able to expend into bioconversion of grubs. I will say that a good ratio of feed is one big pod is kind of the equivalent to 30 chickens, adult chickens, based on that golden rule of a third, and a third. And that's a good ratio to go. I have about 40 chickens that I oversee, and 2 pods is more than enough and gives me ample to freeze for the winter months.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about that? And then I had a question too about actually, yeah, talk a little bit about that, and then I'll ask my question.
Sure. Well, as our most seasonal production on farms, whether it's corn, tomatoes, any annual, black soldier fly, for people who do this outdoors, it's seasonal. And so you want to produce more than you need at that season, and you can preserve it many ways. You can dehydrate it, you can desiccate it or dry it. There's freeze drying, dehydrating, there's dehydration in the sun, there's dehydration in a dehydrator. There's many approaches for that. You can also freeze it. I personally think the easiest thing for me to do is to take the grubs that harvest off, put them in a Ziploc, and throw the Ziploc in your freezer. Just make sure to warn your significant other that there are frozen bugs in that, because they can look like the blueberries, and she don't want to open those blueberries and put it in the in the mixed drink. So I would say go with the quart bags, not the gallon bags, because a gallon bag of grubs is heavy and a quart bag is more manageable. And, you put maybe 10, 15, 20 of those away. It's really easy to do. Most people who are homesteaders have some type of greenhouse. I'm not greenhouse, freezers. Yeah. But anyway, overshoot your needs, and then you have extras, just like you do when you can tomatoes or any type of crop. You just have more than you need, and therefore you have stuff in the cooler months. You're not forced to buy so much feed. The same goes with the other components of that third. In many climates, there are still green things that grow even in the winter months, and there are still seed-based plants like grains that you can overwinter in piles, like sunflower heads or corn that can be saved. And you can just peel that off and throw it in the chickens in the winter. Same with sunflower heads or amaranth heads. You just got to be creative. I just want people to try to overshoot production in regards to capacity, and that way you have stuff over the winter.
Awesome. Now I had a question. I think I asked you this back when I met you, but I don't remember what the answer was. So, do they require like vitamin or UVA or UVB or anything like that to finish their life cycle, or so can you raise them completely inside that container with the lid closed and them never getting exposed to light, or do they have to have sunlight exposure or sunlight exposure, or do I need a certain light bulb? That was something that was.
That's a great question. In order for the breeding and mating to occur, you need sunlight or certain wavelengths. If you're completely underground in some bunker, specifically it's UVB, but most greenhouses that I'm aware of have sunlight somehow getting in. And so you really don't need to provide additional lighting. If you have a full spectrum bulb, chances are the UV component is in there that you need. And that way you don't have to look for a bulb that's UV specific, UVB specific. But you can't do this like in a basement setting, Steve, without light. They won't mate. And if you do get mating, you're probably lucky. But I've never heard of an example of people doing these just in their basement without any type of light. Like, you could do that with earthworms and redworms, but and other species, but not this particular species.
I guess all the
like little candle light and some soft music then.
So all the female black soldier flies are named Roxanne. You got to turn the red light on.
Probably. Yeah.
Well, The little T5 lighting and a little,
This is a bad joke.
music down in the basement. Then.
Well, Roxanne is red light, and red light is the infrared portion of the spectrum, whereas, the blue-purple is more of the UV. So I guess
That's true.
A true nerd goes off onto the spectrum. I love it.
We love that. We love that.
Yep.
Well,
we
yeah.
talk about that all the time.
Yeah, sometimes you can know way too much.
No,
that's just not true.
Yeah, that's true. The funny thing is, the more you think you know, the more you realize how little you actually do know.
hang around this show for a few weeks. You'll find out you learn something new every week almost.
Yeah, well, I think one of the tenets of permaculture is to practice reskilling. And the only way to do reskilling is to have somebody who's sufficiently knowledgeable on a subject train everyone else in the group. And I think that it helps enhance transitioning overall. And that's the best approach I've ever seen to permaculture groups, is to just teach others what you know. Everybody knows something. And if you don't know something, then go learn it and then teach others. So.
And then share. Yeah, and then share it. Yeah.
Learn, do, teach.
But be discreet with your preps. Nobody needs to know your 18-month food supply where it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So, have you worked with any other beneficial insects, or any other advice on insect?
I mean, I have honey. I've had honeybees over the years. I don't have them right now. They are a challenge. They're difficult, but they're very rewarding. That's it on insects. I will partake in the walking sticks in the near future, but that's it for insects for me.
Very cool. Awesome.
Well,
Do you want to mention your website?
Oh yeah. We're tarrivertradingpost.com. Tar River Trading Post. You can go to Facebook and like us. If people are finding out about the technology from this podcast, please message us directly and don't order online. Because if you order online, you're going to pay the full retail. I'd rather give you a friends and family discount for having had to suffer through this podcast. And that's got to be worth something. So just message us and we'll just do a manual order and manual discount. And sometimes they're more fun because they involve human interaction.
Yes, I like that. That last point is very important to me.
It is. Sometimes things like retail have become so impersonal that it's sometimes enjoyable when you actually talk to somebody on the phone. We do on the larger, Steve, on the larger pods when they're purchased, we do include a free conference call for setup and operational support. We don't want people to F it up, because we really make our business on word of mouth and referrals. And so if people aren't doing it properly, then it doesn't benefit us in any way. So we found that people don't always tend to read the 30-page manual, and they just want to be told what to do. So that's why we offer the free conference call.
Plug and play. They want plug and play.
They
Awesome.
do.
Then they want to bitch, and if they mess it up, they want to bitch about it in the feedback section. But yes, call Karl. Don't bitch about Karl's stuff. Call Karl, and they'll take care of you. That's what he's saying right there.
Yeah, and to tell you the truth, every climate zone and everybody's setup is unique. So sometimes their microclimate, there's certain tips and tricks I could tell them that may not be in the manual.
That's a good point. Yeah, everybody's environment is different. So you're going to have different issues whenever you're trying to do anything like this. As we all know, you're going to have to adapt to your climate and your environment. A mistake people make when they go buy things like this, they don't, I want to do it. They don't take any consideration into planning for figuring out if they're going to actually be able to do it in their climate or their region because of the environmental issues, or what they may or may not have to construct or build or modify in their environment to make it happen. So we run across it all the time, and I'm glad you brought that up so I could think of that.
I did have a hippie accountant who bought only organic feed. Said he did a calculation. He said the payoff on the big pods is about 2.5 years, somewhere between 2 and 3 years. And that I tell people that because I assume his calculations as a finance guy were pretty accurate. But he told me that, and he said that was the reason he purchased it. So I have not done the calculations, but apparently the big pods are on parity with, costs in about 2 or 3 years and pay themselves off. It's important as a business standpoint to have a return on investment. You don't just want to have money sucked out of your wallet.
Well, that's just a return on the machine, but you also have those 2.5 years of all the benefits in your garden or for your fish.
Produce.
So that's a wonky calculation, but I'm glad you shared it.
Well, not only that, look at the carbon you've offset by not driving back and forth to the store for the feed.
Yeah, there's some hippy dippy shit for you right there.
Steve, I wish more people cared about that.
We all care about it. We don't talk about it enough, but it's funny because you're amongst a bunch of hippies. So you keep bringing up hippies, and you're sitting in a pile of them. So.
Oh no,
my hair is just on the inside. That's all.
Yeah, see,
Here you go.
He's got spiritual dreads.
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't cut my hair.
Roger's looking like Fabio there now.
Hey man,
I have to admit,
look at that. 60 years old. 60 years old.
Still riding the front on the roller coaster. You'll be fine.
I have to admit, Steve, I don't think I recall seeing somebody with gray dreads, but I'm sure they're out there.
Oh yeah, the old Rastas.
Oh yeah.
Jamaica got gray dreads. But yeah, not too often.
Yeah.
Well, is there any other topics you wanted to touch on? You're always such a wealth of knowledge on the black soldier flies and stuff like that, and I really appreciate having you on.
I will say this: the tiny pods that allow 1 or 2 years practice are kind of turnkey. They come with everything you need except the food waste and grubs to get started. You can order popworms from Texas A&M online. They'll send you thousands upon thousands of neonates and get you up and running really quickly. It's amazing. Some people just want to convert food waste into grub biomass quickly, and they just have the popworms coming once a month, kind of like a renewal thing. And that way they just get tons of grubs all the time, in addition to their own, breeding regimen. I will say that the larger one is less turnkey and more do-it-yourself, which means you have to go out and get materials. You have to get a couple cinder blocks. You have to get some burlap. You're going to need to get some coir and coffee grounds and a few other things that don't come with it. What comes with it is just the unit itself. So I tell people, go through the manual before you receive it and collect the things you need. Nothing's really that difficult to find. But it's not like the small one where it comes with everything. You got to go out and get it. A lot of people do talk about the lid, Steve. There is no lid for the big unit. In fact, when we engineered it on the original prototypes, it actually suffocated the pods because the metabolic rate of the grubs is so high, they use oxygen so quickly that the lid designs we had were inadequate at bringing in oxygen. So I tell people just have a topper of burlap on it to cut down on the light intrusion, to cut down on evaporative loss, to help keep the food waste from getting crusty, and also provide a lot of growing egg laying opportunities for the females. So that burlap topper that's just on top of the food waste inside the pod is really all you need for a lid. If for some reason there is a critical issue with needing a lid, you can get a piece of plywood, cut a larger diameter circle so no rainfall gets in. And by the way, you have to site these in areas that don't allow rain or direct sunlight to get in, because those two things are problematic. It'll say that in the manual, but a lid in the form of a circle that's a larger diameter than the top diameter, elevated several inches off on some legs, that would be okay because the oxygen and the air getting in and the convection currents are not really being prohibited from entry. And I've seen that work, and I've seen it work in a way that didn't result in collapse. But that, a lot of people ask me that question, why is there no lids? That's probably the main reason. But there were other reasons too, is in fact, for a rotomolding standpoint, because these are rotomolded, it almost costs as much to make the lid as it would the body. And nobody wants to pay as much for the lid as they would a body. So there's also financial barriers.
Right.
So I have a question. So do you do? Oh, go ahead.
You were mentioning freezing the grubs. Do they have a natural yearly life cycle, or if you were keeping the temperatures right and whatever, can you have like a perpetual harvest with this setup, like you can have with the worms kind of video?
In order to have a perpetual cycle going year round, you have to have a climate controlled condition. You couldn't do it outside, obviously. That being said, yes, the only things you'd have to remember is you have to divert a portion of your crawl off, maybe upwards of 3%, into an area that allows them to hatch out. So have everyone seen those aluminum trays that you'd use for cooking things around the holidays? They're maybe about 1.5 inches, 2 inches tall, and they're maybe the size of a sheet of paper. They're aluminum, and you cook like, you know, something in them in the oven. You can put a little moist soil in there and throw the grubs in there and let them hatch out in 1 to 2 weeks. That gets you the adults flying around your greenhouse or insectarium, wherever you have these. And that is probably the best way to ensure continual cycling of the species. I will say this, in the winter, when you do these seasonally, you're going to dump the whole pod and you're going to take out all the buildup of undigested residue. If you're doing it continually, that undigested residue doesn't ever really get dumped because you're always running it. So you're going to have to go in and remove that every 6 months or so because it'll build up too much volume, or, you know, however long it takes to build up to the point where it's kind of inhibiting the pod. So those are just some things I always tell people who do these year round. Places in the tropics like Puerto Rico and Hawaii and the islands who buy these and they do them year round, they just have to make sure to pull out some of that undigested residue. And you probably will have to change your drainage pad every couple of years because it does break down.
For those people, do you want to explain how what the adults eat and drink or don't eat and drink, or what it is?
The adults don't do much. I think they drink maybe some water, maybe some sugar water out of flowers. But as far as I'm aware, they no longer have a digestive tract. So they may basically just drink water to prevent dehydration and death. But there's no food consumption with the adults. Their lives, I mean, they only live about a week. So there's really no need to feed. It's also why they're not associated with pestilence like houseflies. Houseflies do feed as adults and they can live for months. And they have to if they're going to live for months. So that's why they're always annoying you at like picnics and in your house and trying to land on food because they eat. Black soldier fly don't. That's another reason why they're not landing on your food and picnics and stuff. They're just out in the foliage mating. They're really just, as an adult, just a breeding mechanism.
Sounds like if they land on your food, you don't want to eat that food, though.
Black soldier fly, I've never seen it happen.
Because it'd be putrid food.
Well, that's assuming they were in some putrid food first. But I don't know. I can't verify that because I have never read anything along those lines. But I guess anything's possible. If you have enough land on your back, you technically could get lighter in weight. If they start lifting you off the ground. But again, that's never been verified. So anything's possible.
What was the other question? So if somebody had an open container in a greenhouse type thing, say a commercial aquaponics system or something like that, would you have to worry about the adults laying eggs in the grow beds or in other areas of the?
I have not had reports of that. I have not had reports of that being a problem. Some people like to contain them in an insectarium area, which is just like some PVC with mosquito netting and all the adults are in there. Or other people just let them fly free. I guess I have not heard reports on the ones that fly free being a nuisance.
I was just going to ask if they end up in the lights, because I know we've had Fish Ganja guy had a collection of ladybugs, and it damn near caught fire in one of his lights.
They are attracted to lights, and that's a possibility. I know people who have greenhouses tend to have screened lights, and then that becomes irrelevant. I'd say lights that are exposed are probably not recommended. You probably have to screen them, because that could happen, Steve.
Fish Ganja guy's actually problem was they were being sucked into the exhaust of the lights. They weren't actually going into the light. Well, they was LEDs, so I don't think they would hurt them, but they were actually being sucked into the exhaust system of the light frame, the light housing, and that's where they got trapped up. But I got a question, because this is so. What keep? I keep saying I'm sitting here trying to figure it out. What am I missing here? What keeps them from black soldier flies from just flying away?
Nothing. Well, I mean, if your greenhouse is contained,
how you raise them? I mean, why would you buy them and use them? I'm trying to.
Well, no, that's a good question. If your greenhouse is self-contained, obviously they're not going to get out. They're going to stay in there and they're going to breed. In nature, like for example, here I'm in North Carolina. I don't bother even addressing the adult portion of the life cycle, because they're all there. They're out there in nature, and they just are going to come in and lay eggs. So I never worry about that. However, I do one thing different than a lot of people. As occasionally I'll take a handful. Is that Tommy or Roger? Roger?
It was Roger, right? Yeah.
I take a handful of my crawl off and I whip it into the shrubs where I know the chickens can't access. And what that's doing is that's repopulating the adult portion of the native. There's an inherent natural level. Yeah, there's a natural level of the population in my area. I'm enhancing it.
Okay, I got you. You're attracting flies.
I'm trying.
It's Lord of the Flies.
I'm trying to increase the number of adults that are naturally present in my area by seeding the natural area with more grubs. And so if something escapes, I like it, because I know they're just going to be adults to find the pods. They don't tend to fly far, Roger, so they tend to stay local. But I've never had a problem with them flying back in, as long as it's the time of year where there's actually flying insects. Once it gets cold, you don't see that anymore.
Okay, that was some of the answer to my question, because I know I've got a commercial hydroponic greenhouse, and I've tried beneficial insects and all, and the bottom line is if there's no food for them to eat, they go away. And so it was kind of one of those things when I've seen some videos where a guy did where he used the black soldier flies, and somehow he contained them, and I can't remember how. It's been a while, because I haven't really got into the compost, because it was in a compost situation.
You mean he contained the adults, right?
Yeah, I guess and he put stuff in there where they lay eggs on.
Yeah, you
put in the bin.
Roger, I have seen so much over-engineering on that component of the life cycle, which is I call the insectarium component, which is what nature should be doing, which is allowing them to just live up in the canopy, reproduce, and then come back and fly in and lay eggs. That component I have seen be overly engineered with just these contraptions. I never do it, because I do this seasonally. But if you're in an area that doesn't have the species, you're going to have to come up with a contraption if you don't have a greenhouse. So
right, and so now, so you're in Carolina. I'm in Carolina. I live in the Hellhole Swamp.
Where do you live? What part?
In the Hellhole Swamp.
Okay.
The Francis Marion National Forest.
Awesome.
Anyway, so you in the country? Are you out there? Because you sound like you're going on. You talk about off the grid and stuff, so I didn't really catch her.
I'm about an hour northeast of Raleigh.
Oh, okay, up there. All right. Northeast
Lewisburg area, outside of Lewisburg.
Oh, okay. I mean, is that so? You have your a local business there too?
There's nothingness there. Nothingness.
Okay.
Nothing. No, almost all the business is online. My factory that we contract with is in Smithfield, which you probably heard of.
Okay. That's where Andy Griffith, and Opie lived for you guys in Gomer,
Oh, I thought that was Mount Airy.
Well, they were, Raleigh. They always were going to Raleigh, but yeah, Mount Airy. I mean, they were close. It's up in that area.
Ah.
Opie land. Sorry, I had. Yeah, you're right. Mount Airy. Opie land.
Very cool.
Well, that's nice. That's nice. I'm kind of out there. I'm kind of out there. So I've got a lot of. It's nice because this kind of thing makes me think too. Because I've been thinking about the roaches and all ever since I learned the Vaseline trick. It's like Steve was talking about it, I had an aquarium with the roaches, like 1 million roaches in my kitchen right next to where I cook my food. And I put some Vaseline and they never, I'm like, well, that's,
It's funny. We cook good food, or especially when I'm drying OSHA root. Man, we would dry fresh OSHA root when we go harvest it from the forest, and we'd have it drying. Man, they'd be like all of them up against the bottom of the Vaseline trying to find a way to get to it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
We need a video. I told you we could make a horror movie out of that stuff.
If you ever break your container, chocolate and OSHA root, they cannot resist those two things, and you can put that out and you'll draw them all right back.
And the chocolate's not toxic?
Nope. Doesn't seem to have any issue. I've used chocolate always in my sticky traps when I was trying to bait in pet stores and stuff. Always work great. You get mice, you get roaches, you get ants, you get whatever it is that's there. They seek out that smell.
So I have some organic kisses, like the things you put in cookies. I can throw those in with the roaches.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to give them candy all the time, but you can,
mix it in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just during the holidays.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't give it as their staple diet, but if you are missing a couple or you dropped a container or something, you need to draw the little ones out. You can get them to go where you want them to that way.
Steve, can you give the top 5 recommended foods for hissers?
Oh, sure. I would say lettuce. I would say go to your grocery store and just ask them whatever they're about to throw out. You can get their vegetables, the potatoes, lettuces, any kind of greens. If you're going to gut load them, another one is pineapples, grapes, pears, plums, apples. You can give them all the rotten stuff off the tree, stuff that's got worms and stuff in it. Just throw it in there. They'll eat all of it. They'll even eat the worms.
The hissers will eat all those fruits. Okay.
Oh yeah. I mean, basically anything that's not meat. You give them to your BSFs.
Oh, because they're vegetarians, aren't they? Yeah.
I mean, they'll eat a little bit of meat, but not much. In Jamaica, we use a species called a mango roach, which is real similar to a hisser. They look very almost identical, but they're orange. They're huge. They're about this. No, I mean, for real, they're good. No, but they're. I would say they're about maybe this much on my phone. They're almost as big as a hisser. They're big and they're slow. They don't fly. They're pretty slow. And we just keep them in the same thing. We have down there because we raise so many of them. We just have a sawed off IBC tote that has 4 or 5 inches of Vaseline across the top, and then we've got drain holes, and then there's a little thatched roof above it to keep the rain out and keep the sun off of it, just like you were talking about. And then they had to put screening on it because the local birds, they have these blackbirds in Jamaica that they call them like mob birds or whatever, and they'll come right into your house and start eating all the stuff off your counter, or get into your cabinets and stuff. They're jerks, but they'll come in and clean out all your roaches if you're not careful.
Cool.
But that, and we do spirulina. So between the roaches and the spirulina, gives a pretty good base from most of your feed for the fish. Just dry out the spirulina and we press it into a flake, kind of like these thin wafers, and we feed that to the tilapia.
If you'd have told me 10 years ago I was going to be enthralled by being part of a panel talking about bugs all night, I never believed it. Yeah.
Do we lose Karl?
What has our life come to?
Yeah, it looks like we lost Karl for a minute.
Looks like, yeah, Carl's.
I knew he didn't drop out because he was having fun. If he wouldn't have left without
Well, I
saying
see
goodbye.
his logo. Looks like you get disconnected.
I just see a black space on him. He probably
on the live feed or the user feed, it's just his logo. Hopefully he'll come back in a second.
got any more chat questions? Anybody active in chat? David was wondering. You know, he was. I think, is he in chat tonight?
Yeah, he was in chat earlier.
He's got a lot going on over there.
No worries.
Oh, who's going on? Somebody just popped in.
Roots 604 64. So awesome! Thank you so much for joining us, Karl. It was such a cool talk, and it's so much cool information on all the different insects and everything. It was really awesome.
Yeah, my pleasure. Keep me posted on things that sort of evolve from this conversation, because
Sure.
you know, technology evolves drastically when it comes to this particular industry, and I think there's going to get to the point where I think a lot more people are going to start cultivating insects because they want to eat lower on the food chain, they want to be more self-reliant, or maybe, you know, for some other reasons. But I think we're going to see a lot more of this, and it's going to be less marginal, in my personal opinion.
I know back when I worked with the aquaponics source, we sold a lot of your bins to people that were doing prepping. You know, people that wanted to, you know, have a backup food supply or a backup supply for their, you know, their livestock and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of people in that, I call them the survivalists or self-reliant category, that purchase our technologies. A lot of permaculture people do, and a lot of homesteaders do. It's interesting when I have actual events and I speak to a group, and there's like survivalists in all their camo with their guns, and then all these hippies with like their smudge sticks and you know, vegetarian lunches that they brought, all in one room together. It's so interesting watching them interact, because, you know, by attending, they have to just get along with each other. And it's really, that's the best part of these conferences, is watching the dynamics of the two diametrically opposed groups interact. That's worth it, just seeing that.
Bugs bring people together.
Oh, they do. Well, I mean, they both have an interest in self-reliance. They're just coming at it from two different approaches.
Well, then it's the truth. If you know, if you're going to sustain yourself in you know, time of survival, you need it all. You need bugs. You need all kinds of different things. You need to, you know. But I don't really prepare, but I've been learning things for, you know, for 12 years. I've been studying and doing all this stuff, trying to make sure I'll be okay.
I think you hit it on the head, Roger. You actually need all of this. When you said that, I think the hippies forget that they need the security component of transitioning and prepping and homesteading, and the security people also need the people who are going to be producing food and manage the animals. So you need both thought processes together, working as a team, in order to have long-term survival. You can't do one without the other. You really need both.
Right. You need to find it right now. If you're smart and you got that, you're like-minded, you need to find a piece of land with a good well.
We need some militant hippies.
Yeah, you have a good well, though. I have a good well, and it's going to be a good well no matter whether the lights are on or not. You know, so.
Well, Roger, I take that one step further. I put a backup well, and I dig several surface ponds just in case.
Well, we could do that. Our aquifer is pretty plentiful here. We can do that. We're in the swamp, so, you know, we can find water pretty quick.
Yeah, North Carolina, we're lucky. There's a lot of surface water.
Yeah, but you also got a lot of highland. You got mountains and stuff that we don't really. I mean, we got a little bit, but mostly you got rolling hills here in Carolina. Well, South Carolina. I mean, you know, I guess we could argue which is Carolina. But anyway, I'm sorry. I digress.
Of course. No, I think that was a really good point. I know when I was at Occupy, it was funny to see the super far left, and then also like a lot of teabaggers and a lot of right wing people that were there, both opposing the bank buyout stuff, and it was really cool to see people that normally wouldn't even speak to each other marching with each other and totally on the same page. And it is especially when we used to teach the off-grid class at aquaponics source. It was always funny to see that dynamic between like the little intentional community people, and then you got like the super hardcore preppers, and it was just really funny. And then I know Sylvia advertised for a little bit on the Alex Jones show, and then we were getting the really interesting customers.
Wow.
Because yeah, there's a huge demographic for people that want to be self-sustainable and do the prep stuff. So
yeah. Or at least, if not that, they're just wanting to be more organic and natural now and self-sustaining, instead of, and knowing where the food they're eating comes from. And
that was before Alex Jones went in full crazy. That was back when he was just like the weird prepper guy that was selling food packs.
What, back when Alex Jones was 12?
Yeah.
No, he's definitely a colorful personality. I will say that.
Give him that.
Food pack.
I'm not sure what color it is.
Right. Well, so do you have any garden of your own at all or anything?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. I probably have about a dozen raised beds, most of which are about 12 by 4 feet. I found that that's the most manageable, and I have just about every annual. Every year I expand the garden to make it bigger. Right now I just planted, the fall crops. So I just put in things from arugula, all the greens, turnips, snap peas. I do snap peas, which are the peas that you can eat the pods. I found it actually easier than growing the shelling peas, which just take up way too much time. If you can eat all of it, it's just faster.
Yeah. It's fucking, I'm sorry, it tastes great too.
Yeah, they're sweet.
We love snap peas down here. They used to eat them like candy.
And I put in, because Carolina has such a long season, Steve, I put in squash too, like the zucchini and yellow crookneck, because it's only going to take 55 days. I planted them just a few weeks ago and I already got harvest. I put in some potatoes for the fall crop because you don't want to do that in the summer. It's too hot here. What else, Roger, can we grow now? Radishes and all the brassicas.
Broccoli, you can do broccoli.
All the brassicas, the whole broccoli.
I mean, if you want a long time growing, I mean, I've never really got into it, but I'm kind of broccoli, asparagus. You can do that. Cabbage. It's time to plant cabbage again because that'll be.
Yeah, asparagus is a spring crop here though, and it's a perennial, so it's a little bit different. You have to have a permanent bed for asparagus, but they do pump out for about 30 years.
And that's the thing too. I guess it's about, you got to start it up and keep it going and going and going.
You do.
Really, you can start it again. There's 2 seasons, over here. We got 2 seasons. We got your spring season that is basically in June. All the tomato sheds and everything down here are closed in June. The tomato growing's done outside. But I start my seeds in June for the greenhouse, and then by September I'm yielding fruit. September, October, the greenhouses open up and they yield fruit to the end of December, which, since I had an unheated greenhouse, that's the end of my growing season. With a heated greenhouse, I've got friends that sell all the way from when in fact, their yield starts in July when they do their seeds. They get everything out there, they redo their houses, and they all grow in Beto buckets. And I'm the only one that I grow in 3 to 5 gallon poly bags with perlite. They grow with Beto buckets perlite. I spray to waste, they drip to waste, but they have heat. So they start their seeds in June or July every year, and then they open up their markets, their greenhouse market at their land, like in September, October, and they're able to grow all the way until June. And so we grow in a greenhouse all the way from from July where you start it, because propagation can be hot as hell when you're first starting. So hot and humid is good for propagation. And then by the time it cools down in September, like right now, everything's fixing. All the tomato growers are greenhouses here going to go nuts because it's been 80 something in the daytime and 70 something at night. And them tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers love that. And so if you got heat, you could grow all the way till June of next year. And then you shut down, tear everything down, clean it up, and go again. So that's what the advantage of having a greenhouse and living in the right place. And we do. You're right. Now, the thing you used to have a crookneck squash, and all I can think about is bugs. Yeah, how about harvesting some of them bugs? What do you do to keep all the bugs from spreading to your other crops, Carl, when you're growing a crookneck squash, which brings more bugs than any crop on the planet? Problem.
To tell you the truth, I have mesh cages over all my squash because of the squash borer.
Yep. Okay.
The mesh does allow the pollinator to come in, but if you notice the squash borer, which is a moth, they can't get through the mesh, but the pollinators can. And I've noticed that I got about 90% reduction on squash borer infestation, but it's such a nightmare pest here that I've really been relegated to just grow, what's the one squash that's immune? Butternut.
I'm not sure.
Butternut.
Yeah, I'd like to find out what's immune that doesn't get it. But
Butternut's immune to the squash borer. They can't break through the thick stem.
Yeah, yeah, we love that. That's old northern squash kind of thing.
Well, yeah, it's like a winter squash, but all the other squashes, like the summer squashes, they get decimated by the squash borer.
So you talk about screen, is that like 1/4-inch openings? Like that
mesh? I'll measure it and let you know. I actually don't know. Okay. I'd say it's close to 1/4-inch.
Yeah, well, that's close enough. I mean, that's good. It's going to be what's available to somebody to find locally, and we're just talking about some, helping somebody out. And actually, it's pretty nice. We're talking about some veggies, tonight. So I appreciate that. No, but I just had to, because I swear when you mentioned how you're growing all that stuff out there, and I go, we're talking about bugs, and then you brought up squash.
Oh, I mean, honestly, I don't use chemicals. So Roger, when it comes time to deal with like the potato beetle, I just go one afternoon for an hour and just manually squish them all. And then I do it a couple days later, and that's good enough control.
Wow.
For potatoes.
You don't even use a soap or anything either, huh?
No, I don't. The one other thing I didn't plant that I still will this weekend, Roger, is scallions. I'll put a bed of scallions in.
Oh, yeah, those are nice.
They're so quick.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks a lot. That was a really awesome talk you gave. That was really, really cool. Thanks so much.
All right, guys.
You want to tell people how to find you?
Answering my silly questions.
Yeah, Tar River Trading Post. Find us on Facebook. It's always the easiest for communication.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot. And you're welcome to stick around if you want. We're about another half hour. We kind of just go over what everyone's doing in their garden and stuff. So you're welcome to stay and join us. If not, it's late on the East Coast, so if you want to bow out, that's totally cool too.
I would like to know from Roger what particular crops he thinks are the best to grow here in the Carolinas in regards to production. What would he say the best are?
Are you now? When you say production of what will grow the best, or what you're going to make?
The littlest amount of problems versus the amount you receive back in a harvest. Like I personally found out that peppers, sweet potato and blueberries seem to be the easiest here.
Okay, well, my company. I won't tell you online because that'll pinpoint me. But my farm is I've got a hydroponic greenhouse farm. It's a pepper farm. But I grow cucumbers. Thing is to get the margin up on the resale to the I grow for Whole Foods. So yeah, and I don't make any money, so I've kind of gotten away from all that. I've gone back to the table stuff, to which I try to grow stuff that. Are you there? You look like you froze. Oh, okay. I try to grow stuff that I can eat and I can sell to people in an open air market now because I'm a small farm. So I found that I couldn't really. I put a lot of money into getting prepped and getting everything done to grow a bunch of pepper plants, and I got beautiful preppers, and Whole Foods loves my produce, but I can never make any money at the end of the year. So I decided that I'd make a lot more money if I'd enhance my income, or at least, you know, make some profit by growing the lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers still. So basically, that anything on the vine, I can grow any kind of microgreens. You could, in fact, there's a lot of I'm in an area where we have the certified South Carolina, or certified, you know, you got that in North Carolina too. I don't know if you're involved or know anything about that, but we have certified South Carolina grown, and we have fresh to the table. And fresh to the table is where restaurants in the Carolinas and Georgia and all, because when we have a USD thing or something at Clemson, people are from North Carolina, Georgia, and South Carolina are all there. We got people from the North Carolina Department of Agriculture, people South Carolina, Georgia, and then we got representatives of USDA. And I got ahead of myself. But I found that it's best to grow all right, let me get back on my train of thought. All right, with the fresh to the table, you can, if you're willing to do a lot of legwork and all, you can get in touch, which I did try to do a while, but I'm blind and I no longer can drive. So it's really put a hindrance on anything I do. So I've totally gone to where I'll be going to be doing open air market, local market stuff now. And I'm not doing Whole Foods anymore because I can't get it there, because I have to drive it over an hour to deliver it so it can be delivered to the Southeast region. But people that want to start can do microgreens. There's a big market for microgreens, and you can get in touch with the Fresh to the Table is for you to get in contact with all the restaurants in your area. And this is something that's in North Carolina too, where so that's what we were trying to do, microgreens. Anything that, if you can get a chef, we do CSA, community sponsored agriculture, where we sell a big chunk of money. You give us some money, we guarantee you X amount of pounds of fresh produce throughout the season. You know, but I think you're right on there. I've done some potatoes, but I don't seem to get the yellow potatoes because I honestly don't think we got a long enough cold period. Like you were just saying, like with you were just talking a minute ago. Lettuce grow. You grow lettuce like crazy around here, so you could have a lettuce crop. You know, you can. The problem is we had a lot of that years ago, and that scare happened in California where the cattle had gotten into the water supply and they had that salmonella break, probably 8 years ago, maybe 8, 9 years ago, and nobody would buy. I had a friend that had a 30 by 144 foot greenhouse with a pond where he had an automated system growing romaine lettuce, the most awesome romaine lettuce you ever had in your life. Like this, I mean, 1.5 to 2 feet tall at the end. And he had to just shit can it all and kill it, because when that salmonella scare came out, no markets, nobody would buy lettuce. People were that ignorant. So it's such a fragile situation. As far as growing stuff that you can grow, I'd stay with the viney plants, the cucumbers, tomatoes, and the peppers, because those are the ones that cost you the most money. Lettuce is easy to grow, so grow whatever you need to put in your salad. And then whatever herbs you want are real easy to grow. And it just like here, we've got a longer growth season than you do. Probably a month, maybe. Or so, I don't know, maybe on each end. But
are you zone 8.5 probably?
I think we're more like 7.5 to 8.
I'm 7B here, but with climate change, we're more like 8.
Well, see, I'm south of you, so I'm going to go down to 7 because the lower, like 7's warmer and 6 is warmer, right?
No, it's the other way. So you're probably 8.5.
9.
Yeah, you're probably 8.5. Can you grow loquats there?
I've never tried. I had no vested interest.
Do you have citrus there?
You can grow lemons and limes here pretty good, but oranges are better in Florida and southern Georgia.
Yeah, you're probably 8.5, 9 then.
Lemons and limes grow great here. You know, not much apples, not much on the apple side here at all.
Yeah, they need cool climate.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just trying to think what else I see around.
Oh, you probably can do figs really well.
Peaches and pears. Pears do pretty well here. Peaches do well. Lemons and limes. You know, that kind of citrus.
Yeah, I'm sure you could grow an orange easily.
You could probably grow an orange tree if you got an orange tree in a place, you know, like a nice part of your yard. It'd just take a while, and it'd just be for you. You wouldn't be able to make a cash crop out of it. But you could.
I've noticed my pear trees do better than apple trees in North Carolina. My fig trees do really well here. And I probably should put more fig trees in, but I'm probably going to pull back on my apples. It's just, it's almost too hot here.
You need up north. You need to be up north for that.
Same with things like cherries. Cherries just don't do well here unless it's the sour cherry.
Now, see, I got cherries in my yard, but they're not really producing anything. But I'll tell you another, muscadine is what people grow. And if I can take a segue, we always talk about ferments, and one night we were talking about ferments and stuff, and I couldn't think of what it was, but what grows practically wild around here, and everybody has it. It's real cheap, and we're talking about doing ferments for the fish. Muscadine.
Yeah,
great.
Here too.
Yeah, they make a wine out of it. You can't eat them, man. That's I can't eat them. You know, that's some nasty, sour.
I don't mind them. I actually like the flavor. I have the golden one on my property. I don't have the blue one, the blue purple.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I won't get the other one. How many acres do you have, Roger, approximately?
I just got a couple because I started the greenhouse operation after we had our land and we had 2 acres, and I said, well, that's big enough to do something, and I got there, and.
I have a 100-foot hoop house. I just put new plastic on it that's totally underutilized. So I'm going to try to do some stuff with it this year. I'm up to I have 68 acres now, and I'm adjacent to a large vineyard. And so,
wow,
like, why should I grow grapes when they have a whole 300 acres of grapes?
Right. So what are you going to do with it? Are you going to do conventional, hydroponic, aquaponics? Are you an aquaponic guy at all? Because, I just wonder, because most guys that come on the show are somewhat, or they thought about it, or you do hydroponics?
I look at aquaponics as a city pursuit. If you have very limited space and you have like a warehouse or an old factory that you could reutilize or repurpose, I think aquaponics works great. But in the country, when there's $2,000 or $3,000 an acre, just grow stuff in the fucking ground.
In the sun. Well, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree, but I disagree. You could do hydroponics and grow. You get 3 times faster, a lot more yield, and all kinds of stuff doing a simple hydroponics drip system.
Yeah.
In your hoop house.
I think for things like corn or sunflowers, that's.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, fertigation, I don't know. They're doing a lot of work where they're doing the fertigation, which is drip tape buried along the root zone.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
They pump that every day, and everybody that's growing strawberries professionally, commercially in the Carolinas are using that same thing. In fact, now I have my own mix that I've had made for years, but I've got friends that have 250 rows, 100 feet long of strawberries that are out of this freaking world, and they bring in a 400-gallon tank of concentrate from Clemson every year, bury it in the ground next to all their stuff is buried, and then they run it all year. Now I'm not a big on running all that chemical, the way. I mean, again, I'll eat the strawberries though, so I'm not sure I wouldn't, but I make my own solution, so I don't have any need for that. But all I'm saying is, I think you'd find that in your hoop house, if you were willing to try some fertigation, like I was talking about, or some hydroponics, you might enjoy the better yield and really tasty fruit too, real juicy, tasty fruit.
Honestly, Roger, I have not used the fertigation tape. Where do you get it? Do you just dripworks.com or FarmTech?
You can buy it pretty much. Well, FarmTech. There you go. You can get it from Ag. Well, you're in the Carolinas. Just get it from Southern Ag.
Okay.
All up Southern Ag. You know what I'm talking about, right? No, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, they're in North Carolina and Georgia, and they drive trucks. They'll drive a truck to your house and drop it off for $20.
Okay.
You can order whatever you want, because once you hook up an account with them, you could order anything you want from now on and get a much cheaper price, plastic or anything else you want. Just go to Southern Ag, you'll make an account, and they have a truck that drives around North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia every Wednesday and Thursday. And if you make an order, they drop it off Wednesday or Thursday on your driveway.
Do you have a recommendation on a cultivar you recommend for strawberries?
No, but I can find out for you. We can keep in touch. I'll find out for you.
Because the cultivars that are in the north are not the ones that do well here.
No, because you've got a longer. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say that the little sweet. I've been doing a lot of wild raspberries or cultivated wild raspberries that I have, especially in Colorado. I had a couple of different strains we found in the mountains that were really good, and brought them down and then just transferred them into the greenhouse.
Awesome. I have not had the best of luck with some cultivars of strawberries, but then again, I don't let those reproduce. I let the ones that do reproduce. The ones that tend to be really large and do well in the south tend to be plagued with a lot of fungal issues. So there really isn't the perfect one that I found. So that's why I asked about the cultivar.
And spider mites. If you buy a store-bought if you buy store-bought spider mites, there's a high chance that you'll have a strawberry plant attached to them.
Yep.
If you buy a spider mite colony at the store.
So start your strawberries on your own.
Yeah, or just make sure you just bomb the ever-loving shit out of them with something like a lemongrass soil-based pesticide or something like that is really good for nuking them without, you can still eat the fruit on it and everything. Just try not to hit the flowers if you can help it, but making sure that when you get your root starts, anything that's sold in a store pretty much will have the spider mites on them. It's a plague.
Does that CO2 kill work on that stuff too, Steve?
Yeah. Absolutely. So you can take your starts, throw them in a commercial trash bag, throw a pitcher in there with some dry ice in it, fill it up, maybe get a little 4-pound block or 5-pound block, throw it in a pitcher, pour some hot water in there, and quickly close up the bag and tie it off, just enough so that the air can seep out. But basically to replace the air with CO2, work like a little gas chamber, and you can kill all the mites and everything. It won't kill eggs, but it will kill all the adults.
How long?
You do it in there for 35 to 40 minutes, and then open the bag up.
Good question.
But it's super, super cheap, and and safe and everything else. So.
And I assume DE works good with spider mites.
Yes. Yeah. So I was just going to say that myself. You could actually take that and put them down and dust the medium with DE, and that would do the same thing. That would kill them, and it would kill the eggs when they hatch too, or the hatchlings, or whatever you want to call them. I mean, I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't seen it. I hadn't been living mite-free for years now. After using DE, I would never even bring it up. But boy, it's nice to see you guys on the show bring it up too, so that it shows that I'm not the only person on the planet talking about it. Did we lose you, Steve, or did you mute?
No.
Mute?
I'm just muted. I just had to deal with something off the computer. No worries.
But I've got a local farm that's real successful with strawberries, Carl. I'll try to find out what they're growing. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll call the county agent tomorrow. I'll call the county agent and find out what strawberries do the best in this region, And have you tried that?
I found between you and me, I found my cooperative extension office to be closer to useless than if I was to go ask one of the employees at the Walmart garden center.
Well, that's sad. We go back and forth with that. I've had some really good help, and I love Clemson and all, and they're moving forward. But I did find out when I first started in our hydroponics and growing down here that they didn't really. I couldn't find anybody. Now, I don't want to make a broad statement that nobody at Clemson in agriculture or anywhere in the agriculture department did not have a clue about hydroponics, but it appeared that they didn't really have a clue about hydroponics. And I get the same thing from all the other guys with hydroponic greenhouses in the area and the state. And it's I want to say this, they are moving forward, and they've done a lot that really press that fertigation, and that fertigation's working, because instead of having to drag and do all that stuff in a minute and throw all this fertilizer all over the damn field and waste thousands of dollars, now they're just applying nutrients to the root zone. So I don't see, I just, it's just an awesome way. It's bringing farmers, it's making it cheaper for them to grow, and it's making farms successful, because it's not a matter of whether the roots went and found the nutrients or not, the minerals, the fertilizer or not. It's applied, and then the plant uses what it wants. And if you know what you're doing, you give it what it wants, it'll be great.
I'm very familiar with Clemson. They are top-notch extension state. North Carolina, NC State is top-notch, but remember, we have 100 counties here. I just happen to be in a county where most of the agricultural interest is commodity crops. And so they have no people that handle things like aquaponics or permaculture or homesteading.
You're talking about corn and stuff, right?
You go to Asheville, or you go to Pittsburgh or Orange County, and you'll get those types of extension agents that really know about the things that we're interested in. But the extension people I encounter really don't overlap my interests. So
that's a great thing for you guys to bring up, is that if you are having problems, especially with insects, and you don't know what they are in an outdoor environment, man, your local agricultural extension, or maybe not even and like he's saying, maybe not even the one directly close to you, but maybe one not far away at a different school or a county or two over, are great ways to find out what the hell it is that's destroying your plants or attacking your system or causing you havoc, because that's what they deal with. That's what their job is.
And they're very friendly, and will take, if you call them up, you may not get them because they're always out in the field, but they'll call you back. I've never had an extension agent or a county agent, like Green Acres is a place to be, and I've never had an extension agent not call me back and give me all the time I needed to talk about my problems and try to solve it for me. So I get that on the forum all the time. And people, they're going, well, what do I do? I said, well, I don't live in frickin' wherever you're at. Call your county agent. I mean, they're if you've got a local agriculture environmental issue or a bug issue or whatever, call your county agent.
Also, most of them smoke weeds, so you don't have to really worry if you tell them, oh yeah, well, my weed plant's like, even if you're in a less than legal area, 95% of the time those guys smoke weed. So you don't.
I would just stick to saying, I'm growing tomatoes and leave it at that. Tomatoes and peppers and stuff. And yeah, we're not quite there yet to tell people in Carolina you're growing weed.
Yeah, but I mean, most places though, just saying, like, the likelihood of them being like a secret DEA agent is pretty close to zero, because most of them are working as an ag extension, to be out in the field and enjoying that kind of stuff anyway. So.
Well, the thing is they don't longer care about a guy growing some weed to smoke some weed in their house.
Exactly.
The county sheriff, they don't care about a guy growing a few plants. If he's sitting in his house watching football and drinking beer and smoking some weed, but if he goes out there on the corner and starts selling pounds, they're going to jump his house. Yeah. They're more interested in meth labs and crack dealers and all that out there.
Big way. Yep.
It's going up. Well, meth labs is a big thing, because we've had 3 or 4 blown up here.
Yep.
They blow that shit up, and so our county. It's funny. Our county sheriff got kicked out because he got in trouble.
And open blasters. People open blasting. It's another one.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing. That's why, people say, well, you've never done this. Well, see, I stay away from the concentrates and stuff that, see, I can get away with having a little bit of weed, and even if I get caught, I'm going to get in trouble, but not that much trouble. Yeah. But if I got freaking butane concentrates lab, they're going to burn my ass and take my fucking land, and then I can't grow no tomatoes. So, I err on the side of my tomatoes. So my peppers. Oh, my farm's going to curse me now. I'm cursed. My peppers. I err on the side of my peppers before I want to do concentrates, but
you can do concentrate. There's people. There's a market for pepper concentrates now, actually. I don't know if you saw that online. Yeah.
Well, Steve, hook me up, buddy, and I'll grow the shit out of some peppers around here.
There you go. And then when they come around, you show them that. I'd be like, I don't think you want to smoke this, man. This is Carolina Reaper juice.
Oh, Carolina Reaper. Yeah, you don't want to do that. Carolina Reaper, the hottest pepper in the world.
Steve,
I've got some.
Steve, you cannot imagine how easy it is to grow peppers in the Carolinas.
Well, in Jamaica, so there's a pepper tree at the apartment I have in Jamaica, and the base on it, I no lie, is like a good 1.5 feet across, and it's a tree. It's the size of a small citrus tree, and it's been alive for like 40 or 50 years, and it's a what the hell are they called? Scotch bonnet pepper tree.
Habanero.
Scotch bonnets, but
yeah, well, Scotch bonnet is a habanero.
Oh, I didn't know that. But yeah, so that I mean, and that's literally a tree. So yeah, when you have them in good conditions and they can overwinter and maybe just defoliate, I mean, you can get monstrous.
Well, I mean, peppers are soft perennials. They're not annuals. We just treat them as annuals because of our climate. But they can grow for years. I actually don't know what their lifespan is. I assume several years.
Well, here's something interesting. Well, first of all, here's a habanero.
Yep.
Hey, I got a question for the guy in chat. Voji grows. He's saying he grows lots of peppers in South Florida. Do you grow sweet sop, or I think they call it, was it nana in Spanish, or custard apple? I think they call it in English.
I've never heard of those, but I'm always interested in finding new peppers. I'm really am.
Well, this is a fruit tree. I was just kind of curious.
Where does it grow?
It's native to Jamaica and the Caribbean.
Let me click on it here. Hold on.
There's 3 in that family. You got sweet sop, sour sop. Sour sop is what's the English name for sour sop? Damn it.
Well, while you're thinking of it, let me answer the thing about the peppers. When I first started growing, hydroponics 12 years or so ago, I actually experimented with some deep water culture peppers and tomatoes, and I had like an 8-gallon Sterilite tub from Walmart with like 4 net pots in it, 3 3/4 net pots and I had 4 different colored. It was a mixed patch of bell peppers, different colors: red, purple, yellow, and green, red, orange. And so I grew them. And so I grew a little bit, didn't have a lot of success because deep water culture here, the water, you can't keep it cool enough unless you do a cooling system. So it's not a good idea. Well, I'm not saying it's not a good idea because I really grew some nice plants, but it's the logistics of it. It just doesn't make sense in the long run for me. And I don't want, that's another show. But the thing is the winter came. And I was in one, I'd got a million things to do, and I left that damn bucket, that bubbler out there on the side of the place all winter long. And then I went out there one day in the spring and I had 4 or 5 peppers growing out of that sucker.
Nice.
And then I went through I just let it go. I got 3 years I grew peppers before I finally just cleaned it up because there was really something I was keeping going with electricity that was producing just a few peppers. But the interesting thing, like you were saying about that tree, if you take care of it and keep the roots alive, I believe that you could grow a pepper plant that you could have pepper yield every year. I think it may I don't know if it decreased or not.
Yeah,
I've never had more.
What you can do is you can take them and put them in your garage and you defoliate them and keep them warm enough that it keeps the root balls warm, but they'll go into like a hibernation.
Really?
Yep. Yeah. So that's one of my secret passions. And if you guys are looking into want to get hardcore and pull from a different pool of knowledge than all the cannabis stuff that's out there, if you go on to the hardcore pepper Facebook groups, you would not be able to tell a difference between them and the weed groups, because these guys are doing LSTing, they're grafting, they're doing all the same stuff that we're doing with cannabis, but with peppers, and growing them indefinitely. So you have guys that have what's it called when they do with the trees, topiary. You have guys doing topiary peppers in their basement, and the whole wall is peppers. Like all kinds of crazy stuff with these guys. Yeah. Or guys have them set up in like horizontal racks, like topiary apple trees and stuff like that. It's really cool, some of the stuff these guys are doing.
Well, I used to grow peppers and cannabis in the same room, and I would just keep the peppers on the outside on the wall. you know, kind
I
of
got
thing.
you
like
one better. I got
And
you
I
one better.
tell you,
I grafted
tell
a
you-
pepper. I grafted a pepper cutting onto a cannabis plant. Hold on, I'll pull up a picture while we're talking.
oh my God, you grafted a cat. You got it to take
Yeah.
and grow. Cool, man.
Zombie plant.
Oh, Frankenstein.
Tommy's seen the picture.
Yeah, it's badass.
I'm trying to find that. Give me a minute or two. I'll dig up the picture. If not, I can pull it from one of my presentations. But
Hey, I looked up soursop. It's also called guanabana. My mom has given me guanabana before because she's Latino, and the guanabana is a nice beverage. But that is a soursop. Sweet sop I wasn't familiar with, but
Yeah.
you called it sugar apple.
yeah. I think
They're tropical fruits. I don't think they would even grow in Rogers' climate.
yeah, definitely not Rogers. But I was just curious about the guy who said he was in South Florida.
South Florida for sure.
Oh,
yeah, because you probably need where you don't have a winter at all, and that would be down in Miami and Lauderdale and all that.
Whereas the soursop,
Yeah.
the soursop, you can run them in colder weather. They it's I think above 40 degrees they'll tolerate.
Well, I only get down to below 40 about 5 nights a year, usually. You know,
Yeah, in a hoop house, you could probably get away with it.
it'll be like, well, that's what happens to my peppers every year. Somehow, I don't ask me why. It doesn't matter if there's like you could play golf on Christmas Day, on the 28th or 29th or 30th of freaking December every year. A cold snap happens that kills my tops. You know, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It could have been cold as shit all December, but they were still, but not cold enough. And then it's always right before January, right before New Year's. It always kills them. So that I can pretty much say that you can grow from April to first of the year where I'm at, and then it gets really cold in January, February, but not always below 40 degrees. You know, even at night. In the daytime, we only have a couple of a month. Well, if we have one of those, El Nino type situations, are we in an El Nino now?
I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, I can never keep up with it because it just seems like it's, you know. But anyway, or La Nina, whatever it is. I think that there's times when we don't even have a winter really. I mean, it'll get cold as shit a couple of nights, and it'll be you can go and play. You go like people are on the beach. You know, it's crazy down here. It's because I'm an hour, well, about an hour inland, or I'm an hour from Charleston, which puts me probably, I don't know, to the coast, actual coast, probably 40 to 50 minutes maybe, or 35 to 40 minutes as a crow flies. So, but I'm just above where the tidal waves come from the hurricanes pretty much. I mean, we got rivers and we're in the swamp, so the rain washes us out more than water from the ocean. So we're a little elevated just above that ocean, you know, our sea level, you know. Oh, there we go. What is that? A cannabis pepper plant.
The pepper I grafted onto the cannabis plant here. This plant was pretty late into flower. You can see the buds, little popcorn buds on the back, but this is an actual pepper I grafted onto my coworker Joanne at the time at Aquaponics Source was like, "What are you gonna do? Take the pepper cutting and graft it onto your cannabis plant?" Like sarcastically, and I was like, "Yeah, I am. I'm gonna go do that. I'm gonna see what happens." Awesome. So, but yeah, it worked. I mean, I chopped the plant down about another 3 or 4 weeks after this, but I got one pepper off of it just for the sake of saying I did it, which was pretty cool.
That is cool. Did you what'd you is that a Dutch bonnet? Because they make different colors.
No, that was just a regular. I think that was a poblano, not poblano, Serrano. If memory serves me
Serrano.
Right.
Okay, I couldn't tell. It looked like it was more purple blue than green. I couldn't tell.
It might have been. I was growing purple and blue Serranos, and I had some pretty large Serranos. So
yeah.
I'm super hardcore into peppers.
Well, that's something else. That's something else too.
They're a great allegory plant. If you're in a state that's less than legal and you want to get used to growing stuff and grafting and the pruning techniques and the pinching and bending and super cropping and all the same defoliating, all the stuff that you would do to a cannabis plant, they're a great plant to learn on. And in anticipation of legalization, if you're trying to get good at something, they're a great allegory plant. So,
well, they taste good too.
Yeah.
The only problem I'd say to that is that they're a lot snappier. They're very brittle. You got to be real careful. They'll snap and break.
Yes and no. If you pinch them right and the nutrients are right, they're good. Let's do a quick wrap up and go over. Well, as soon as I try to do a wrap up, everybody gets up. I guess I'll go over what I've been doing. I'm still working on my cannabis company projects here in California. I'm hopefully going to be able to talk more about that in another week or two. I know I keep saying that, but there's some issues we ran into regarding some of our paperwork that we had to adjust because of a new regulation that popped up, and we had to basically resubmit everything like the day after we finished submitting all of our paperwork. So I'll be able to talk about that more freely here in the next couple of weeks. So but aside from that, I think I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can say on that. All kinds of cool stuff in the works. We're working really hard on getting a lot more really cool guests on the show. We had Karl on today. He's a really amazing guest. Next week we're going to have Dustin from EndoCanna is going to be talking to us about cannabinoid deficiency diseases. He has a very rare form of cannabinoid deficiency disease, and will be talking to us about how it's helped him basically get his life back. And he's a huge advocate. He's testified to state level Congress or state level legislature as well as federal legislature on behalf of cannabis patients. And he's a really awesome dude. I had a chance to meet him when I lived in Colorado. And they also make really high-end extracts. So he'll be on next week, barring anything crazy happening. Yeah, that's what I've been up to. Marty wasn't able to join us. He had a family thing. Same thing with Fish Ganja Guy. So they'll be back. And Brain Gross said hi. He'll be back with us here pretty soon as well. He's been out for a few. What have you been up to, Tommy J?
Well, research. You know, I heard everybody talking earlier about they just want results, and I was thinking, yeah, you can't get results without the research.
Yep.
So I'm doing that. We've hooked up. We're having some high-end extraction equipment being sent to us. We're running some experiments with.
Looking forward to that.
You know, went up to. I'm excited about that. Went up and saw the eclipse and those kinds of things, and you know, we're getting settled back down here in Del Mar. Getting ready for the next phase. You know, working on the projects that you're working on too, and we're just excited and. You know, kind of looking forward to being back around things that are growing. I really miss my bat cave. And I'm looking forward to being around some living things that I can play with and things like that.
Yeah, we have he's working on some of the same stuff that I'm working on. We have a bunch of fun things that we'll be able to talk about here before too long. We'll get ourselves in trouble if we talk too much before roll out, but we'll have a website up soon and the rest, and then we can talk more freely. So, but yeah, I keep teasing stuff, but I'm super excited, and I'm not allowed to talk about why I'm excited and what I've been working on and why I've been in a different place all the time and everything. And I'm just super stoked to talk about it when I'm finally allowed. So we actually have some couple of cool guests I'm going to get on the show for that episode as well that are involved on the project, and you guys are going to be pretty stoked when you see who else we're working with. So I know I'm pretty giddy every time I think about it. So what about you, Roger? You got it. What have you been up to?
Just running the forum and getting my fall grow stuff together. I'm trying to get transportation to go buy my top rail to make one of my new hoop houses, you know, that we were talking about, so I can start my aquaponics project, and that's about it. I haven't even thinking about it, but after night, I'm even more into the idea of I'm in an area where it'd be great. I think I'm going to get into raising bugs. You know, I don't know. I like raise bugs too. You know, and then I can feed my fish, and you know, and we'll talk about all that. We're not going to get into that too much tonight, but that's about all I've been doing. Just trying to keep the forum going, and if you want that, well, I'll just move on that one. I'm just fine. I'm tired now.
Awesome. Well, I think you both of you East Coasters are tired. I think we'll wrap things up and let y'all go. I really appreciate you guys coming on the show and everyone coming on the show today. It was a little bit lighter on co-hosts than usual, so it was really awesome to see you guys step up. And yeah, normally we have 4 or 5 people for co-hosts, and today we just a little bit lighter crew, but it happens. Life happens, so and not everybody can be on every week. So it was really cool to see this show. Get Karl on. I think it was we've been trying to get him on for a little bit, and it's nice to finally be able to line up schedules to where we can get him on, and it's really, really awesome. Again, you're one of my favorite speakers I've ever had a chance to go see talk on permaculture. So I really appreciate you coming on.
It.
Man, I enjoyed it a lot. I like the fact sometimes when we have a smaller panel, because it was just, we streamlined right through the show, had some fun times, but we covered a ton of information and clarified all kinds of stuff for people out there listening. So they're going to I mean, gosh, the information in this show tonight could be in a book,
Oh, shout out to David Hogmaster. He's was in chat today. Wasn't able to join us on the show, but it was nice to see him on. So I appreciate it, buddy.
He's our buddy.
Yeah. And do you want to tell people how to find you one more time, Karl? Maybe people who join late.
Sure. You can find me on Facebook. Just add me if you're a friend. Don't add me if you're a foe. You could message me on Tar River Trading Post, and most of my contact details are found there.
Awesome. What about you guys? How do they find you, Tommy?
Oh, I don't have much content going up, but my channel's Old Art Grows, and it's going to be changing up here. I'm going to be doing a little bit less growing and maybe some more exciting stuff of making sheets of amber that people like to look at.
Awesome.
And what about you, Roger? How can people find you?
Well, I'm at ilovegrowingmarijuana.com, and I'm the administrator there. I run the forum, and we've got most of our panelists and a lot of great experts there to help you out. We got all the copies of the podcast posted now, and we're going to build some more podcasts up there. So I'm in the process of refurbishing the forum a little bit. We're gonna build the podcast section and add more people that are like-minded and part of, say, this friends of the panelists here, which I've yet to really go to other people's pages because we're all pretty busy, but yeah, we're working on it. And always check out ilovegrowing.supplies.com for flower power nutrients, and you can click on through and buy genetics out of Amsterdam from our website, ilovegrowingmarijuana.com. Some of the best genetics. And Steve, did you get my message? I got some real good news for you, buddy.
I'll have to look.
I talked to Robert about gifting you guys some of genetics, man.
Oh, awesome. Yeah,
So
that'll help out with this new project we're doing. Again, I think the only thing I can say right now is we may or may not be working on a 22,000 square foot grow. I think that's the only thing I could probably say without getting in trouble. So.
And you can also say it's going to be tits.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to get it going so we can talk about it, and then all of us can have a job.
Well, Roger there is the check-in guy. Checks all the IDs.
Yeah. I'll make sure if you're not allowed, you're not allowed. Not coming in.
So, alrighty. Well, thanks everybody. If you guys want to check me out, you can check me out at Potent Ponics. If you're listening to the audio format version, you can listen to it on SoundCloud, and you can check me out on YouTube at Potent Ponics. I have a bunch of other additional content on there, and appreciate everybody for watching. Remember, complaints go to apmeds@gmail.com. Because he's not here this week. Also check out Marty's channel, AP Meds, and his Patreon, AP Meds. He had some cool stuff on this week on supplementation for dual root zone stuff. So we should check that out.
Yeah, Marty's got some cool shit going on.
And it's cheap. I think the entry level thing for his channel is like $3 a month. So I mean, everybody has enough money for like a can of soda. You know what I mean? He's not asking much. So support him if you got the extra $3 a month. So
Awesome.
All right, and thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks again for Karl and him extending his time to join us. So thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Good night, everyone.